Hello, beautiful people. It is your girl, the real Tony Hickman, and I am back with a very interesting video. Uh, I can't believe I'm even here to make this video. It is 15 years. I have survived 2 brain aneurysms and my first stroke. My first labeled stroke. So in 2004, I had my first brain aneurysm, and even though that one had me disoriented and my side effects was vomiting, a lot of vomiting and yellow stuff came out, I didn't have a headache. My son was, because I was at my mother's house at the time, and my son said that I was nonchalant. He went and told my mother that something is wrong with mommy, and they had to rush me to the hospital. So by the time I got to the correct hospital, because even though I'm in an ambulance, I had to go to over 3 different hospitals before I could find an open bed, which ended up being at Emory. And they went through my groin area and went up to my brain, and supposedly, because this has been a debatable topic, but supposedly they clamped something in my brain to stop the leakage and the flow of blood going that way. And so it took me about 3 to 6 months to heal. I'm not sure because it was so long ago. And but I eventually healed. I got back on stage. I was in magazines. I was doing my thing, because before that I have been on gold and platinum albums. For those of you who don't know, I have done a lot of things in my music career. And so before, I was still independent now at this time, before I was signed to a major label. So I'm doing everything on my independent. I'm in these Southern magazines and, really doing my thing. And I finally finished a second album that was independent through me and one of my good friends, Ty, Jump Street Records. And we decided to put my project out together. But some situations happened, but me and my boyfriend at the time went to New Orleans to celebrate this completed project. And the project was so amazing. But we went to celebrate this completed project, and at that time, his mother had made me like some vegetarian rice. So I ate the rice, and later that day, I just started feeling sick again. And so my first thought was, I have food poisoning. That was my first thought, because there was no way in the world I was thinking I was having another brain aneurysm. But I was. And so I kept on vomiting. I had that same symptom of the yellow stuff coming out, the vomiting. And from my understanding through his family and him, they said that I passed out in the bathroom. I remember being in and out of consciousness throughout all of this. And so they rushed me to the hospital. Eventually, I ended up at Tulane Medical Hospital. And I just remember bits and pieces. But I was in the process of having another brain aneurysm, and this particular aneurysm, it started leaking in my brain. So if y'all don't know, just look up the history of aneurysms, because when they start leaking and bursting, people die like driving their cars. They will die at any moment. And so it started happening in my brain. So long story short, we get to the hospital, they shave my hair off, and some of this story is going to be from news that has been told to me about the situation, because some of it I was just out. And so we get to the hospital, they shaved my hair off at this time and contacted my mother. And my mother had to drive from Atlanta because that's where I lived, and I was just in New Orleans visiting. And so she had to drive from Atlanta to New Orleans to come and check on me, and she had my son, and so she had to drive and check on me, but bring him with me. So I guess she signed the papers and gave them permission to operate on me. But when they told her that I would have a 50-50 chance of living or dying if they did the surgery, she still wanted them to do the surgery, which, like, either way, I was in a bad state. And so they did the surgery, shaved all my hair off, and when I came to, I had staples like on this side, and I still have a mark. It's like a U in my head. Like, you'll see most people who have had brain surgery, they have that U. And so I have the U underneath all of this crown on my head. I have a U in my head. It's a cut. And so when they finished the surgery, from my understanding, my son came in the room, and my son was young. I believe he was like 6. And he came in the room and saw his mom with all of these staples in her head, and he freaked out. He started crying and screaming, and they had to take him out of the ICU because he was really causing a lot of chaos. And I can understand that. I mean, you're seeing your mom, and your mom has these staples in her head. Like, that has to be disturbing. So I think I was out for like a couple of days. And but whenever I came to excuse me, of course I'm in shock. I really don't grasp everything that has happened. I'm kind of just taking everything in as I slowly come to my realization. And so I had tubes up my nose, one down my throat. And I just remember being so thirsty, but I couldn't say I was thirsty. And the doctors told my family that I couldn't have water. And so I'm like, I need water no matter what they are saying. I need something to drink. So I pull the tube out of my mouth, the tubes out of my nose, because I was just like, this don't feel right. So, and y'all have to remember, I am not in the right state of mind. Like, my mind, I just had brain surgery, right? So I done pulled everything out of me. And I'm like, I want water. And I'm trying to communicate it, but it's not coming out. And so I'm telling them, so they gave me a pad to write it. And when I write water, the M is a W, and all the other letters are not making sense. Like, I had what is it, dyslexia or something? I don't even understand. For those who have dyslexia, I truly don't understand how that works. So forgive me if I am being offensive, because I don't mean to. But I was just really scrambled. And so I got me some ice. Somebody brought me some ice. I think it was my mama. Somebody brought me some ice because I needed something. I was so dehydrated. Can you imagine if you have all of these tubes in you? So yeah, my mother, the hospital, Tulane, had some apartments strictly for people who came from out of town to visit their loved ones in the hospital. And so some kind of way, I don't know if the hospital paid for it or some of my friends paid for it, but they covered my mother and my son for the I'm sorry, y'all. They covered my mother and my son for the time that they were there. And so my mom came from the apartments to come back to ICU to see me. And for the rappers in New Orleans or my music heads in New Orleans, if you are watching, everybody knew Cheeky Black. Everybody knew Cheeky Black, but Cheeky Black is a nurse in New Orleans. She's also a nurse, and so she knew who I was because, of course, I started rapping in New Orleans. And she was my nurse. She ended up being my nurse, but she on the elevator while my mom is coming up. And so they talking about this girl on the elevator. It's her and a couple of other nurses talking about this girl on the elevator who done pulled all the tubes out her nose and her mouth, and she just being stubborn. And my mom turned around and she said, "Is her name Tony Hickman?" And Cheeky Black was like, yeah. And long story short, but my mom was just like, yeah, that's my daughter. That's how she is. She's stubborn. So of course, I could not walk. I couldn't speak. I couldn't understand. I couldn't comprehend. And I was paralyzed on my right side completely, and my left side was extremely weak. So it was almost like I was completely paralyzed. And so the doctors told my mom that she needs to look into putting me into a nursing home because it was likely that I would never speak or walk again. My mother said she is not putting me in a nursing home. And so they transferred me to an in-house therapy place in Louisiana where I think it was called Lakeside, but I had to live in there. I was one of the youngest people in there. Everybody else was seniors, but I was one of the youngest people in there. And I had to begin my therapy. And so when it first started, I'm sorry, y'all, I was not planning on getting emotional, but when it first started, when I first got there, the realization started hitting me. And so this song kept playing in my head, Penny with a Hole in It. Feels like I'm hopeless, like a penny with a hole in it. And it would just make me feel so defeated inside when that song would play in my head, you know? So moving forward, I had to go through my emotions. I had to go through my tears. And then I'm thinking about my reality as far as my music career and everything. Like, nobody has hired a disabled rapper, and you've never seen a disabled rapper publicly on the camera, you know? So my whole thing, and I was in a wheelchair at this time. And so my whole thing was like, what I'm supposed to do now? Like, my voice is messed up. Like, what am I supposed to do? And so I'm having this pity party for myself. And this is throughout the process of me being in therapy. I had this pity party for myself. And one of my nurses came in and she said, "Why are you crying?" And I was just like, and I told her exactly what I just said. You know, what about my music? Like, why God keep doing this to me? Because in 2004, the same thing happened when I was doing my music. Like, what, you know, why does this keep happening? And I was just like, I'm mad. I'm mad at God. Like, y'all keep talking about God. Like, I'm mad. What does this keep happening for? You know, what is this? Ugh. Excuse me. I don't want to re-record a clip or nothing on this video because I need it to be organic. I said, what is God doing if I keep going through the same thing every time I pursue my music? and God don't care about me, and I was suicidal and all of this. And so I just started expressing all of that to the nurse. And she said, well, Tony, let me tell you something. She said, while you are wondering about why this keeps happening to you, I want to put another thought in your head. You need to wonder why you have had 2 brain aneurysms and a stroke and you're still alive. And when she said that, it was so profound, but of course I'm in my pity state. And so I'm just like, whatever. And I can't even remember this nurse's name, but that message has stuck with me. And it was shortly after that I just got my I'll be damned attitude. And I just started working toward my own healing and being resilient. And even though they said I would never walk or speak again, I walked out of there with a walking cane. Now, I fell several times, and it was a time where they wanted me to stay in a wheelchair to even go to the bathroom. And I was just like, no. And I got up and I fell. And I fell so many times that they had to put me in a room with cameras just so they could monitor me, because I was stubborn. I refused to accept that as my reality. I eventually got out of there and was transferred to another therapy place in Atlanta. And I eventually got out of that. And I still went on and off through my insecurities of learning to love myself, not feeling attractive. I'm 6 feet tall. I'm 6 feet tall, and I've never had an issue with that, like not feeling attractive. I've had insecurities all my life, but I never had it to this degree where I couldn't wear my high heels and or my balance was off, because I was definitely on a cane, and even on the cane I was falling constantly. But I just refused to leave with a wheelchair, even though they wanted to give me one. But I went through my insecurities, and I remember one of my friends came to my house to visit me. And this was shortly after I moved out of my mother's house, because I didn't want to live with my mother anymore because she was enabling my progress. And not that that was a bad thing for some people, but for me, I knew that if she does everything for me, then I'm not going to do it for myself. And it was important for me to be able to do it for myself. And so I moved out and got my own place. And so one of my friends came to my spot and was just like, you done lost your confidence. And of course you don't want anybody to just look at you and tell you something like that. Like, that was so, to me, rude and harsh, and it just hurt. And but he was right. He was right. So I had went and got braids in my hair, so I could still have long hair and feel beautiful, feel like a woman. And it worked temporarily, but it still didn't heal that pain that I was having inside. And I realized that pain was the process of me rebirthing, of me letting go of the old version of me. I was mourning her. I was mourning that Tony that I knew and I had lived with for all of my life. And so I had to relearn how to love me and who I am becoming now. And that has been a process in my dating life, in my relationships with people. It has been a process. And I'm not ashamed of my tears. because I have my battle scars. And it's okay. I don't think tears are a sign of a weakness. I think tears are a sign that you know how to release and let go. And that's what this journey now has all been about. So yeah, I mourned the old me. But when I took these braids out of my head, I was in the mirror one day and I had to take the braids out of my head. And as I'm in the mirror and I'm taking the braids out, right? One by one, with one hand. And yeah, I'm taking the braids out. And as I'm taking them out, I look in the mirror and I'm just like, I love you. And I'm crying and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, I love you. I love you. And I'm sorry. And I love you. And I love you. And I'm taking them out. And that was the beginning. And I started going to the YMCA and I worked out so hard. They put me on the wall. Eventually ended up putting out a book called Chemical Suicide because they told me to keep out perms and chemicals out of my head. So I wrote a book on that and I put that out the same time that I put out an album after the aneurysms and the stroke. I eventually moved to Houston, started speaking for the Heart Association, linked up with another organization called Young Stroke for people with who have strokes at a young age. And I started speaking and performing for them. And so all this time I was thinking, oh my goodness, nobody's gonna want a person who has a disability performing for them, because even though I'm not in the wheelchair, it is very obvious that I still walk with a limp and that I've gone through something traumatic in my life. And I realized after I started performing for Young Stroke and even the Heart Association and the Stroke Association, and I'm doing all of these big events, I'm on TV, I'm doing all of this, and I realized that the old me had to die. The old me, that's why she wasn't accomplishing everything she needed to accomplish, because the old me was not living in her complete purpose. The old me was tainted by a reality that needed to change. And since I was not stepping up to listening to myself and making that change, I had to be forced into a difficult and traumatic change that will alter my life for the rest of my life. Since then, I've done more things in my music and speaking career than I have ever done in my life, and I'm not even done. In 2021, Crip Hop Nation, which I eventually joined them, and this is a group of artists with disabilities from every walk of life, black, white, green, or whatever. I teamed up with them and we won an Emmy in 2021 with music. Some of the lessons that I have learned: number one, there are many stroke survivors out here, and some people heal faster than others. I look at some stroke survivors and they have worked out so hard and they have the results that are really satisfying. And I look at them, and at first I used to be like, dang, why I'm not healing that way? Why I'm not going that fast? But I realized that I cannot compare my situation to anybody else, just like I can't compare myself to anybody else in life. We all are on our own journey, and so we have to trust that process. Number two, people will try to fix you. People always want to fix you. If they see that you have a disability of any kind, They want to fix you through prayer, through insisting that they know the right recipe for you, but they want to fix you. And the problem is many people don't acknowledge that by implying that you want to fix me means you're also implying that I am broken. And I'm not broken. And if I am broken, then I broke in a better way. No one with a disability is broken. We have this sense, this I don't know, this feeling in our humanity where if it's not fitting in the box of perfection that we have been taught, then something is wrong with the picture. But you can't fix me. And when you come and inorganically and try and force your way into my life by thinking you should fix me, you are coming with that very energy that you are saying, you think I am broken. None of the closest people in my life have never came to me and came in an energy that they want to fix me. They understand that it is a process. And I fix myself internally. If I come to you for your guidance, I am coming to you. But me, not me, nor any other disabled person, please stop telling people that you're going